morning. My name is Kate McDowell, and I'm happy to serve as the worship associate today and welcome you here. I invite us to take a deep breath and center ourselves with these words from Reverend Scott Taylor that call us to gather. We gather as a house of stories. As we learn of those who have gone before, the way in front of us becomes clearer. As we weave together our individual tales into a common story, our loneliness lessens and the ever-present web of our oneness is revealed. As we listen deeply to each other's difficult stories with tenderness and trust, we descend into the longings and learnings, hopes and fears of the humanity we share. Beneath the wells from which we drink, there is a deeper well that feeds them all. Come, let us tell each other tales of our thirst. Let us drink from the stories that sustain us all. Let us come fully into this time and place together. A flaming chalice has been a symbol of Unitarian Universalists for many decades, and we join our siblings in faith each Sunday by lighting our chalice here in the sanctuary. For those joining us online, I invite you to light a candle or chalice in your own space as we share these words by Reverend Sandra Fees. For the stories that long to be told and retold, for the stories that long to be imagined and reimagined, for the stories that long to be envisioned and celebrated, we kindle this chalice. May its flame bring the truth, different truths, different paths, and different voices, all needed to cultivate a transformative story of justice, love, and beauty. And now please rise in body or spirit for our opening song, number 128, For All That Is Our Life.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Urbana-Champaign. We are a diverse people of many different ages, bodies, genders, histories, identities, and beliefs, united in our mission to build community, seek inspiration, promote justice, and find peace. My name is Reverend Beth Monholland. My pronouns are she, hers, and I'm honored to serve as the lead minister here alongside our associate minister, Reverend Sally Fritchie. It's my joy this morning to welcome you into this sacred space, and I trust that this morning your heart will receive whatever it most needs. I want to welcome any guests who have joined us today. I invite you, if you are visiting with us and want to stay connected, to complete a visitor's card so we can send you more information about all the ways you can engage in the church here. This morning is an all-ages service. Our REE, our Religious Education Programming, will return on January 19th. So today, all of our young people and RE volunteers will stay in the service, as they're always invited to, for the duration. If you have a very small one, we normally have our nursery open, but due to illness, the nursery isn't open today. But again, we welcome all the little noises and distractions that all bodies bring into this space. And if, no matter your age, you are finding that you need to keep your hands busy and you would like a coloring or activity packet, you can grab one from the entryway. And you can always, for any reason, join the live stream of the service over in Fellowship Hall. We are, of course, living in endemic times, which means we are just constantly faced with germs and diseases, and we want to keep each other safe. You are always welcome to wear a mask in this space for any reason. And if you would like people to keep their distance, we have color-coded lanyards in the entryway. A yellow or a red one just means you'd really like people to maybe wave from you instead of tackling you with a hug. Thank you, sorry. Slow ripple of laughter. I am really grateful that you all are here on this snowy January morning. For folks who are joining us online, if this is normally how you join us, welcome. And if you just looked outside and said nope to the snow, that is totally understandable. But it is January in the Midwest, and so here we are. I walked this morning, I was sharing with someone, just before sunrise in the park with my dog, and the snow was softly falling. It looked like a picture postcard, and I thought, if it just was like this, we would all be happy about snow. But I do want to welcome you to January, though. We are starting a new worship theme this month, and that theme is story. The power of stories, how they emerge from the depths of our culture, from our subconscious, get that word wrong all the time. Stories emerge from our individual families and childhoods, from our friends, from the movies and TV and art that we engage in. Stories shape us and they shape our world, and that has been true for all of human history. Humans have been telling stories long before we ever developed written language, stories in the form of drumming and dancing, painting on cave walls, stories shared, told, and retold around campfires and turned into songs, stories that helped us to make sense of who we are and our place in this vast, beautiful world. And while we modern people may sometimes distance ourselves from the creation myths and epic tales of gods and goddesses, we are still telling stories to make sense of our place in the world. We are still telling stories about who we are and who we want to be. Nigerian storyteller Ben Okri says, "In a fractured age, when cynicism is God, here is a possible heresy. We live by stories. We also live in them. One way or another, we are living the stories planted in us early or along the way. We are also living the stories we planted, knowingly or unknowingly, in ourselves. We live stories that either give our lives meaning or negate it with meaninglessness. If we change the stories we live by, quite possibly, we change our lives." Okri's riff on storytelling, that we live in stories, that stories either give us meaning or take meaning away is, I think, the heart of actually what it means to come together in community, especially spiritual community where we are trying to make sense of our lives, to create meaning here together. And so I ask us this month to explore what stories we are telling. We, individually, sitting in our pews, sitting in our homes, what stories collectively as a congregation are we telling? And what new stories do we want to create together? To help us think more deeply about stories and perspectives and what storytelling even is, we're going to engage in a little storytelling together this morning. And I'm going to invite Kate to come up and lead us in our next piece.
So, some of you know well what I do for a living. I'm a professor at the University of Illinois, like a lot of people. But I have this really unusual particular role, which is that I teach storytelling. And today I wanted to bring you just a little piece of the tradition that I come from. So I come from 130 years of the library storytelling tradition. And for those who don't know, this tradition of telling stories to children and families in libraries, mostly to children, started well before 1906, so well before the child labor movement. We're talking the 1870s when librarians began slowly to do this, and by the 1890s it was really well established that this was a practice that people did to get the books off of shelves and into the hands of children, many of whom were working all day in factories. So this chance to read something, it was not pure recreation in a sense, it was also trying to find something aside from just the grind of work that truly did dominate these young lives. Most children at that time were at work full-time by the age of 12. So just imagine the difference that it would make to have anyone have time to read to you a story at a library or to tell you a story. So in the tradition that I come from, we bring the story to life, not by memorizing every word, not by recapitulating just the book, but by telling it to the audience in the way that works in the moment. And librarians would train for this. Augusta Baker, who was the first person to be appointed storytelling lead at the New York Public Library and was a pioneering African-American female librarian who changed the way that we did children's book lists entirely. She talked about being trained by Mary Gold, and Mary Gold wouldn't let her up there until she had finally gotten it right. It was a long time of learning to tell stories before you could do this thing. So in this tradition, we make stories together. And the audience responds, and we shift as they do. I used to work at the Urbana Free Library, and I would tell stories to 90 children and families at the same time. And there was not one day when I told the story the same way from moment to moment, from session to session. Every single time was different. But we know when it's the same story, and we connect with the teller. The audience and the teller connect. We have at least trust enough to listen to one another. But it's different in this tradition. We're not just delivering a story, right? We're making meaning together out of that story. The responses create the way that the story is told. And this explains the good and bad things about story, right? Because on the one hand, it's so incredible when it comes together in a space where people do share meaning that is made. And on the other hand, stories can just run off into spaces that we never imagined. We've seen more of that in the last 5 years of my life than I ever imagined seeing, certainly. So I want to tell you one story that connects to our ideas today, and then I want to invite us into a process of building very short stories. And let's see, I have to pull my notes for my short stories, yeah. Building very short stories, 6-word stories, and later in the service you'll have a chance, if you'd like to share a story that you made or with permission of your neighbor who told it, that you heard. So we'll do a little play with stories today. I think it's very meaningful to have a chance to play with stories sometimes. So I worked at the Urbana Free Library, and I worked there at the time when we were trying to get this building renovation done that now has been there for 20 years. It's a wonderful marvel, but
But at the time, it was a hard fight, and there are actually lots of stories about that, some of which I won't tell from here. But we were sitting at a table one day, all the folks in the children's department, and we were looking at the situation we were in, which was above us was this poured concrete 70s ceiling. Remember these? They're like a waffle, like they have waffle spaces in them. And then inside each waffle, there's a can light that pulls a little pool of light down. So if you hold the book just under the light, you might be able to read pretty well in that part of the light. It was a terrible design. It had always been a terrible design, much to the chagrin of the wonderful Fred Schlipp, who'd been director there for 35 years and got there just before this happened and is one of the international experts on library buildings. You should see his 800-page book. I mean, he's, so for him, this was just painful. And we didn't know what to do. But all of us in the children's department were sitting there, and suddenly this one brilliant colleague of mine, looking at the ceiling, also looked at the floor and said, what if we dig the foundation down deeper? Could we get some light? Could we get some space if we did that? And that is exactly what we did, right? The whole building, in some sense, the children's department, if you go in there today, you'll go down either a ramp or stairs to get into that part of the building. And the reason is so that there could be some light for reading, so we could have enough windows to see. The whole building was a matter of the right moment of imagination, the right story taking off in this place and space. And now it's an experience for generations of children already and to come. So, speaking of children, you've looked around today and noticed that a lot of people are online and not in the room. So we're going to do Time for All Ages just right where we are, and we're going to play with 6-word stories. So my 6-word story about this story you just heard is heavy ceiling, no light, dig deeper. So I want to invite you to think about something that's meaningful to you and make a 6-word story. I'll give a few examples. First day of school, new shoes. Ice cream melting on a hot day. Secret wish whispered to the stars. Secret wish whispered to the stars. That's 6. And this one, hidden treasure in the backyard. Old bike, new adventure awaits. That one's 5. It's okay. It doesn't have to be exactly 6, right? We're just going to play with this form. So I want to invite you to take, I'm going to put my timer on. We're just going to take about 5 minutes to play with this. And then I'll call us back after that time. And I'll wrap with a couple more words, and then we'll move on, and we'll see if there's space later if you'd like to share any of these. All right, 5 minutes.
We didn't give you paper, but it is helpful to write things down, right? So if you have an order of service, just feel free to jot on that, grab a pencil. And if you need a prompt, because I know sometimes prompts can be really helpful, think about the snow. What are you wishing for the new year? Is there a story from your childhood? So I'll plant those little seeds for you. And so think about 6 words, a little story you want, and no pressure. This is by invitation, but what we hope is that you have some fun with it. So.
chance to think about your 6 or so word stories. And the last thing I'll say before we sort of move back into our regular program is just to mention that I have found in my experience teaching storytelling and now data storytelling as well for 20-some years, or since 2017 for data storytelling, trying to help our students know how to discern truth from falsehood. The thing I found is that when I ask people about their stories, most of our most meaningful life experiences we store in our minds and we carry with us as stories. We tell them differently to our nephews or to our neighbors, right? But we carry these most important things to us as stories in our minds and hearts. I should say one last thing about this graphic, which is just thank you to Hillary Pope. Some of you will know Hillary, who's the co-owner of the Art Coop, who years ago, when she was a student at Parkland, designed a bunch of graphics for me, and this is one of them. They're all absolutely wonderful. So hold on to your stories. Think about what they mean to you. It's okay to choose to share or to not share, just as Beth mentioned as well, right? Like not every story is for sharing right here and now. Sometimes we tap into things that take a while. Other times it's ready to go today, and that's wonderful. So we'll have a space for that later. Okay, so community matters. We live our mission at this congregation in many ways. Building community means holding space for our joys and sorrows, and also connecting day to day and week to week through the opportunities both within and beyond our congregation. We invite you to read and subscribe to our weekly e-news to stay up to date on all of the activities offered through our REE program and our social action councils. This morning, I want to highlight just a few things. Look and make sure. So join UUCUC members this Thursday evening at 6:30 for a skating party at Skateland. This service auction event is open to everyone for just $15, and all proceeds go to the church. Please see Jody Hanger or Chris Hanauer for more details. And I'm thinking I might go, and I don't skate, so anyhow, if any of you want to come and watch, I'll be there watching. So. The next LGBTQUU and Allies potluck is this Friday, January 10th, beginning at 6 p.m. in Fellowship Hall. We'll be planning for a church-wide education option on how to best serve as allies and as advocates for our transgender friends and families in the coming year. Please mark your calendars for Saturday, February 15th for a very special service and ceremony. At 1 p.m. that day, we will host our official installation of Reverend Beth as our settled lead minister. Yeah, I think that deserves a round of applause too. This is an all-ages service with music from our choir and the crooners, guests from across the state and the Midwest, and a light reception to follow in Fellowship Hall. Read more details about these and other events in our weekly e-news, and check out the full calendar of events in Realm. So, each Sunday, in recognition of our very real interdependence and reliance on each other, we pass the plate and share our offering with an organization doing the work of justice in the world. Our shared offering partners for January is Elevated Access, which is a not-for-profit organization launched here in Champaign-Urbana in 2022 in response to the extreme healthcare bans being enacted across the U.S. Since that time, Elevated Access has logged over 1 million miles and over 1,400 flights for passengers needing abortion and gender-affirming healthcare. Elevated Access is a shining example of an organization that shares and puts into action UU principles of inherent worth and dignity of every person, the right of conscience, and justice, equity, and compassion. You can give by text or through the online portal on our website, or if you are here in the sanctuary, the basket will be passed and checks can be made out to UUCUC, and in the memo put shared offering. Half of what you give will go towards sustaining the work of this church, and the other half will go directly to our shared offering partner. We invite you to give whatever is generous for you. This is also the time to submit a written joy or sorrow using the cards in your pew rack or sending an email to joysandsorrows@uucuc.com. .org. Thank you. Let's say that again. Joys and Sorrows. The email address is joysandsorrows@uucuc.org. Right. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you, everyone. Our spoken joys and sorrows each week are really a part of the story that each of us carry with us, and making space for those stories is part of our spiritual work together. If you do have a joy or sorrow you'd like shared aloud this morning, you can still pass that on up to me. I do have one submitted via email from Pat McClard. Pat says, "It's actually a joy to see so many smiling faces at church on this cold and snowy day." And I echo that. I have a tentative joy I do want to share. For those who came in from the parking lot this morning, you might have noticed that our ramp is done. It still needs to be inspected, everybody. That is our last step, but I'm so grateful for all the persistence of our board and our staff who work diligently with the various contractors and the city on that project that will soon be usable. Yay, Happy New Year. So yay. And this is from Debbie Rugg. Sorrow and joy. Debbie says, "So sad that Claire is no longer with us, but joy that Claire was a special friend." For those who weren't here last week, you may not have heard, but Claire Douglas, who was a longtime friend and attendee here, passed away on Christmas Day peacefully in her sleep. And so we are holding space for her family and for everyone here who knew and loved her. So thank you, Debbie, for honoring Claire today. Those are all the joys and sorrows so far this morning. But for everything that we carry with us, for all that we have shared aloud and that we are always silently carrying in our hearts, I give thanks. And I'd like us to take just a moment of silence. I'll ring our chime. We'll be quiet together to make space for what we're holding. And I'll ring it again to call us back. So thank you to Kate, who helped plan this storytelling, for engaging in this idea of how do we tell stories, our stories which take so many words. How do you get a story down to just 6 is a fun creative endeavor. It's fun if you like playing with words. Elizabeth.
Yeah. Hi. Am I wrong or am I just what? We do the joys and blessings song.
We did not. I jumped right into sharing, didn't I?
Yeah.
Everybody. Clearly I need more coffee. For those online, Beth Simpson so wisely following along was like, we didn't sing our blessing song. And we didn't. And here's why, because I changed things today. And I have gotten so accustomed to our rhythm of sharing our spoken joys and sorrows right after the offertory that's what in my brain we were doing. And this is why if you're going to change something, you should probably look at your script. Yeah. And so here's how stories can be. We start and then we stop and we retell it. And making space for that ritual is important for us. And so here's what we'll do. We are going to actually sing our blessing song, and we're just going to do things slightly, is there a backwards, the time is made up and so is everything we do together. But thank you, Beth. Thank you. Yes. Let's take time for our ritual, everybody. We will sing our blessing song, May the Long Time Sun. I've got our bowl of water that represents us as a community and how we hold each other. Stones for your sorrows and petals for your joys, here at this altar table and also in the back. Please feel free to use whichever you want. And if there is another joy or sorrow, we'll do this a couple of times today, that you, in that space, are like, I do want something else shared aloud, then we will. But thank you, Beth, and thank you, everybody, for your adaptability this morning. Also, if you come up here at the chalice table, you'll notice a lot of books today. We're going to keep in our theme of story books out for the duration of this month. These are my books. There are a whole variety of different things that I love. But there's also, if you didn't notice, a picture of our church building. And I wanted that here because part of what we are doing together is creating the story of us, the story we are made of together as a community. So feel free, if you want to come up during the ritual and drop a stone or a petal and take a moment and just see if there are any words, any stories that catch your eye. Not all stories are written. Oral stories, as I mentioned earlier, are far older than our written word. And some stories are painted and some stories are sung. But I can't display a song to you, but I can display some books. And so if you want to take a look at any of those and have that be part of your ritual today or for any of the services this month, you're welcome to do so. Thank you. We'll sing and I'll invite you to come up. Thank you all. Beth was right. It wouldn't have felt like a full, complete service without that ritual, so thank you. And now I'd like to take a little time, by invitation, for you to share, if you'd like, your 6-word stories with each other. Turn to your neighbor. If you don't know them, introduce yourself. And by invitation, see if somebody has something that they would like to share. What is their 6-word story this morning? I'm going to tell you mine that I made up just a few minutes ago. Here is my 6-word story that I think is 6 words. Baking bread, remembering my grandmother's hands. So, turn to your neighbor, to the person in front or behind or next to you. See if somebody has a story they'd like to share. We'll give you a couple of minutes to share, and then, as Kate mentioned earlier, because we want this not just to be our voices up here, if you or your neighbor want to share your 6-word story, it will be like open mic time for a couple of minutes. So Kate and I will invite folks up, but we'll give you a chance to share with each other and practice saying those stories aloud for just a minute or two. Thanks, everybody. Honestly, for the rest of the service, we could do the sharing. So keep the sharing alive in Fellowship Hall today. That will be wonderful. I do have one I absolutely want to share from Melissa, but I think I'm going to get it wrong, but it's okay. Lucy sleeping and dreaming of kittens. Kitties. Of kitties. Isn't that great? And I know many of you can't see, but sweet Lucy is indeed asleep in her mama's arms. Dreaming of kittens this morning.
It's really nice. I have 2 that were shared on the chat. Sick but grateful for online church.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's good to remember. Thank you for that. And then another one. As snow drifts, my heart sings. You probably could guess, I'm such a sucker for stories. I could listen to your stories all day. So just do not hesitate to regale me with them in Fellowship Hall. You will make me so happy.
Do any of you, so we shared one from Melissa, but if anybody would like to come up, we will cede the microphone to you for a couple of minutes, so please come and share. come and share. And if you're taller than me, as everyone is, and don't need the stool, you can push it in with your foot. It does that really easily.
I bet I can use it. Cleaned the feeders, grateful birds rejoice.
Mine is silly and takes the form of a question. What if Dracula was a vegetarian?
Soil smells, seeds sown, veggies grown.
Tuxedo cat needs pets to live.
When I was basketball, run around carrying ball, 2 years old.
Wow. Beautiful Mary's new here. Very warm spirit. 7, sorry. And there she is.
All things belong to all people.
Kate, anything else you want to share?
No, I think just the usual, thank you.
Thank you all. Those were some fun stories. And keep sharing. Keep sharing today, and honestly, keep sharing all month. That is partly what we are here for. To make space for our stories. My very earliest memories, are my grandmother telling me stories, and importantly, of me telling stories back to her. I learned to read early, I think, because I love stories so much. I wanted to be able to tell them to myself and not wait for somebody else to open the book and read it to me. I would get lost in stories. When my grandmother told me stories in those very earliest memories, she made up stories about a little rabbit, and I remember so clearly thinking about that rabbit that the reason I started telling her stories is because I gave the rabbit a different life. And I was like, no, Mama, here's what the rabbit's actually doing. I was fascinated by the possibilities. And stories had so many. I would actually get lost in what maybe somebody else would deem an unimportant detail. Some side character mentioned once, I would start thinking about who they were and what their story is. Some place randomly mentioned, I would long for a map to look it up. Honestly, I still do this, everybody. Watching a movie, a TV show, reading a book, overhearing somebody say where they've been, I immediately go to the map to find it. Geography became a story for me. So many possibilities that sometimes I would actually get sad because I knew I would never be able to read and hear and know all the stories. And I was drawn by the possibilities, by all of those different little rabbit trails of where a story or a character might lead. I think my attraction for those side characters led to my deep, abiding, eternal interest in the retellings of stories. When I was 6 years old, I made up my own version of Cinderella to tell to my sisters and cousins. A version of Cinderella that actually explored, what was the stepmom's deal? As a high schooler and into college, I became drawn to reading myths from around the world The ways that we have told stories over and over again in varying ways. The ways in which we have left so many people out of the narrative, but that people today could look at it and reclaim it. My instinctual, what is that person there in the background doing, I discovered was shared by so many people. Stories matter. Because they tell us something about who we are, about how we're connected to each other, and they reveal so much of what is outside the frame. It's what Kate said in that beautiful diagram she had. There's the story itself, but there is who is telling it and who they are telling it to. And who is telling it changes the story to reflect who they are, and how we hear it and receive it changes the meaning of the story a little more so that it gets retold again in a different way. Because actually nothing is sacred, or maybe a better way to say it is everything is sacred. And so therefore we can keep going back to the stories and mining them over and over, going down into the depths to say, what is the meaning for me now? Maybe meanings. What are the pluralistic understandings of this story that has been told multiple times? How do I let go of the literal translation of something and find the metaphor of the meaning? British author G.K. Chesterton once wrote, or at least it's attributed to him and has been retold in a variety of ways. But he said, apparently, that fairy tales are important, not because they teach children that dragons are real, but because they teach children that dragons can be defeated. I love that. I've loved it for a few decades, but I sometimes think of it this way. Stories matter, not because they teach us that monsters are real. We all already know that monsters are real. Stories matter because they teach us that monsters can be beaten. And there are so many monsters in our lives. And we tell the stories over and over and over to help us to face our sometimes monstrous realities. We need the stories of people in the past who have faced those monsters, who are currently facing them, and how they are defeating those monsters, so that we can imagine what it will be like when we have beaten them. People are facing the monsters of poverty, of prejudice and hatred, the monster of fascism, spreading across the world. And it is too easy sometimes to believe one of the stories about those monsters, which is that they are inevitable and they are unbeatable, that it is actually hopeless. That is a story we can be telling. It is a story some people are living. It's a story that in the telling and the living we actually make come true. And so we need the other stories that help us imagine a different way. And we need the stories that teach us or remind us or hold up a mirror to us about the fact that sometimes the monsters aren't out there. They aren't somewhere in someone else. The monsters are right here. And that is hard for us as people to grapple with, because one of the stories we do tell ourselves is that we are good. We are the hero in our story, are we not? And heroes are always good. And so therefore, if we are the good hero, we can't possibly be monstrous. And if someone's telling a story about us as monsters, they're wrong. And so we need the story from someone else's perspective that says, no, actually, it is far more complicated than that. The dragon in its lair, hoarding all its gold, is terrified and lonely. It doesn't make the hoarding right, but maybe we can see it a little bit differently. It's more complicated than good and bad, than hero and villain. Because good people actually burned women at the stake. And good people enslaved millions on this land for over 400 years. And good people went about their lives quietly minding their business while the Nazis rolled across Europe. And good people look the other way every single day when harm is done to their neighbors. That's a story that we also need to tell. Because if we can tell the complicated story that we are good and sometimes monstrous, that yes, there is evil to be beaten, and that we are not the solo hero doing it alone, but with others, then we begin to complicate the narrative enough to say, it's not us versus them, it's all of us together. Like Alice's story said. We've had so many stories just from one perspective over and over that we sometimes forget that there are multiple stories to be told. Nigerian novelist Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie once said in a beautiful TED Talk I recommend everybody watch, the problem with stereotypes isn't that they're untrue, it's that they are incomplete. Because they tell only one story, and each person, each community embodies many, many stories. How do we come together to tell our many stories while also committing to our mission of justice and love? We have lots of stories to tell as a faith community of how we failed and succeeded in our mission to create beloved community. We have lots of stories we can tell here as a congregation of times we dropped the ball. We failed at basketball, as Theo's story said. We didn't make it. And we keep going. The story is actually never done. And so learning to make space together for the complicated wholeness, the multiple truths of our stories is part of what we are coming together for all the time, but especially this month. What stories are we telling? Novelist Jeanette Winterson, in her book Wait, which is up here on the chalice table, it is a retelling of the Atlas and Heracles myth. It's brilliant and beautiful, one of my favorites, but in it she says, these are the stories we tell ourselves to make ourselves come true. And so what stories are we making come true in this community? Are we making come true a story of rugged individualism or the vital, necessary interdependence? Are we making a story come true that we don't need anyone outside these walls, or that we are thirsty for human connection? Are we making come true that we are going to hunker down and let the storm pass us by, or we are going to take risks and in solidarity with our neighbors demand that justice flow? We can make any of these stories come true this year. But I hope that what we do when we come together is that we nurture our stories enough. We make space to listen to the complicated versions that each of us are carrying enough that we begin to dream of new narratives and new ways of being. I hope that we can start this year with storytelling that opens us up to deeper connection, to deeper love. Stories that help us to actually envision and begin to make real resilience and trust and hope and love. We can start right here today by sharing our stories, even if just in 6 words or in 6,000, whatever you need. Let us make space for the stories that make us who we are. Because that is the only way that we will remake this broken, beautiful world. May it be so, and amen. Once again, beloveds, where's my script? Thank you, Kate. Thank you.
In body or spirit, to sing or closing hymn, the Fire of Commitment, hymn 1028. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to Michael for being our pianist today, to Kate for being the best worship associate and keeping me on track, and for all of you for being here. We'll extinguish our flame today, as we do most Sundays, with these words from Reverend Elizabeth Selly Jones. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your snowy day.
attention? Yeah.